Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Grand Slam Journey podcast, where I, together with my guests, discuss various topics related to finding our passion and purpose, maximizing our potential, sports, life after sports, and transitioning from one chapter of our lives to the next, growing our leadership in whatever we decide to put our minds into. For me personally, areas of business and technology. Today's episode is slightly different than some of my previous ones. One of the reasons why I started my podcast is to have more time for creativity and experiments. And so this is my way to experiment with some of the lessons learned from my guests on this podcast and hopefully bring you some valuable insights as I reflect on the interviews I have conducted. One of the main things I wanted to touch on today is what I call the support systems. I strongly believe that we can never achieve greatness alone. Whether you're an athlete, you're an entrepreneur, you are part of a large corporation, or trying to create a new social movement, or a wider change. There's nothing of great importance that can be achieved just by one single person. And so if you are someone who aspires to grow, who aspires to become better, who aspires to create a path of self-development, and you're on a journey of maximizing your human potential, I strongly believe you are one of those. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be listening to my podcast. I want to invite you to explore what is the support system you have around you. How are they helping you achieve your goals? Who is the circle of people that you share your goals with? And is there maybe a time for you to add someone, or perhaps even eliminate, to tighten up your support system with humans that believe in you, with people that are true and mean the best for you, and will help position you towards the goals you're trying to achieve? Only then you will have a higher likelihood of achieving them. I have to say this lesson didn't come to me naturally. It took me some time of self-reflection. Growing up, I was a loner, and I was totally okay being by myself. Perhaps that was one of the reasons why tennis fit me. But moving to a tennis academy when I was 13 years old was definitely one of the things I needed to do in order to be great. At that point in time, I needed to play with people who are better than me, with people who will challenge me, with people who had the same goal in their life to be the best tennis players they can become. And you can only grow your skill when you are challenged by someone who is better than you. I think that's the ultimate growth. And so one of the best lessons I can give is to find an environment where you are surrounded by the most talented people you can find. Looking back in my life, I also made a mistake. When I was competing at the University of Texas in Arlington, my freshman year, I was the number one player in the team. I had a great success. I achieved being ranked in the top 50 of the Division I tennis, and I was positioned to be the captain of the team and promised to be the player to create a whole new program around. At the same time, I was getting offers from the background to other new universities. Friends who I met at the tour were telling me that I could transfer to their school if I wanted to. I was being recruited by UCLA, Pepperdine, Baylor, USF. It was a tough decision at that time. I felt I just got to know some people at UTA, and despite knowing that the head coach is leaving, Coach Wassemer at the time was the head coach for UTA of the women's team. He took a new job in Europe and ended up leaving at the end of my freshman year. I wasn't completely certain of what's ahead. At the same time, I felt quite loyal to the university for giving me a chance and granting me tennis scholarship. There were many reasons and things I had considered during that summer, wondering whether I should stay or whether I should transfer. And I can make many different excuses around the reality. But deep down, I know that the main reason why I didn't transfer was because it felt great to be the number one. It felt great to be on the posters of the magazine. It felt great to be on the radio being talked about as one of the best tennis players that UTA has. It felt great to be the leader. And I was worried I would have to go to a very competitive environment and fight for my light. Perhaps I would play number 4 or number 3. They probably wouldn't put me in the top of the lineup at the beginning. And so that fear and uncertainty made me decide to stay. It was a decision that I made not based on opportunities, but the decision to stay was a decision that was based on fear and comfort. I finally felt a bit comfortable in my shoes, being the player I became to be after my freshman year. Little did I know what is coming my next year. There's lots I have learned from not taking this opportunity, and I have applied this lesson in my next chapters of my life. I strongly believe that lessons are something we have to learn on our own. And there's a saying that goes something like this: we continue to face the same challenges until we learn the lesson that we're supposed to learn from it. And so I want to bring you a few snippets from my guests about the importance of support systems and how having the right support system helped them grow and thrive, and how having the not so great support system made them make a decision to leave, change careers, or go in a different path. My first snippet comes from my second episode and conversation with my friend and amazing human and athlete, Takeshi Fujiwara. Takeshi is a Japanese athlete in possession of Tokyo's and El Salvador record in 400 meters race. He competed in several Olympics and World Championships. I love how he describes the importance of having a team you can trust. Listen to this piece of wisdom from Takeshi and go back to episode number 2 to re-listen to his full story, which is full of great wisdom.
You are trying and moving things in a way that will make you more likely to accomplish something. Also, your family knowing what you want to achieve, your friends knowing what you want to achieve, helps in that sense. And it's not only about screaming to everybody, hey, I want to be the Olympic champion next year, right? Or, hey, I want to be the best. Also, working in secret is important. It's important to know who you are sharing your success with, who you're sharing your goals with, because it's not just everybody in the world. There's your own world, that people that believe in you, and the people that you believe in, that's your close circle. And it's not everybody that's included in that circle. Unfortunately, not everybody wants really the best for you. We live in this situation where there's a phrase that it's very strong. I'll just mention it just to make a point. You're either envied in life or you're pitied in life. We don't want to be pitied, but we don't want to be envied anyway. But really, when you're working hard for something and you're working hard to achieve your goals, many people will envy in a good way, but there will also be a lot of people that want to deter you or not support you in your goals. That's why you always have to have this circle of friends that support you, and the people you're sharing secretly your goals with, because this is pretty much your family. Whether they're friends or real family, they are your family in this sense. So believing you can achieve something and working in secret to achieve it is very important.
Here's another snippet from episode number 4 with Wayne Ferreira. Wayne needs little to no introduction in the tennis world. He's a former ATP Tour professional tennis player from South Africa. Wayne had an outstanding tennis career. He won 15 top-level singles titles and 11 doubles titles. His career-high rankings were world number 6 in singles and world number 9 in doubles. I love how he describes his experience of being in Air Force Academy in South Africa and playing tennis at the same time with many different South African friends and tennis players who ended up playing professionally. And I wonder if the mindset and the practice and the hard work and probably even the joy and fun they had together inspired them all to compete in a productive way and push each other's limits, which then fueled one of the best generation of South African tennis players.
Well, it was interesting because at that particular time, I think the reason why I did it is because all the good tennis players in South Africa decided to go into the military at the same time. We had a few players who were older that had been in college in the US that were actually doing quite well. They came back. We had the kids who were finishing high school. There were 3 of us that were 16 years old, my age. There were about 15, 16 of us that all went into the military at the same time. And that was probably the reason why I did it, is because we would be able to go every afternoon. We would have to do our services in the morning and our work and whatever we needed to do. And then in the afternoon, we would all meet at about 4:00 and we would go have an academy. And the 16 of us would go and practice for, say, 2.5 hours and then go back to our bunks or back to where we were living and do finish our services. So there were a lot of us. There were 16 of us. We went and played every single day. And we had an academy, and it ended up working out perfectly well for a bunch of us because, funnily enough, at one stage, South Africa had 11 guys ranked in the top 100 in the world in doubles, and 9 of them came from those 16 that were in the military together. So it was an interesting time.
My next snippet is from my episode number 6 with my former head coach, Christian Wasmer. There's so much he shares in this specific snippet. The things that stand out to me is that if we don't feel like we belong or just something isn't right, whatever expectations we might be setting for ourselves, we can't really achieve full potential. And another thing that really stand out to me is the differences in coaching he described. One coach seemed to be more focused on practicing his weaknesses, while the second coach seemed like was more focused on highlighting the strengths and building the game Coach Wasmer had around his strengths, which I personally believe is the way to go. Whether you're an athlete, you're an entrepreneur, or a large corporation, you always want to lean on your strength. As an athlete, and especially individual athlete, such as the tennis player, you also need to practice your weaknesses, so they don't drag you down too much. You're out there alone, and so if your weakness is too visible, someone can pick your game apart quite easily. But when it comes to the big points, big moments, and times to shine, you always lean on your strengths. You always know what your winning points are, and that's how you play a big game.
I did not play as well as I thought I would play, or I didn't play as well as I was expected to play. I would say both from my coach's side and also from my own side. I was a top 10 junior in Germany before I left. I had a benchmark on the team, as I told you, good friend of mine that I grew up with who played on the team. He played number 2. And when I got to Virginia Commonwealth University, starting of the season, I played number 5 and 6 singles. And I had the worst record on the team. Now that sounds a bit drastic, the worst record on the team. We played quite a strange schedule, Clara. So my record was 16-5. I won 16 matches and I lost 5, but it was still the worst record on the team.
Wow. Because
the way Virginia Commonwealth played at the time, the coach scheduled a lot of easy matches. So that the record would, at the beginning of the season, we would start the first 3 weeks and would be 10-0 every single time. He scheduled all the weaker teams in the area and we would really beat up on them and we would win every match like really, really easy. And then it came to the harder competition in the region and in the nation. And basically most of the important matches or really close matches, I ended up losing in that first year. And I couldn't really figure out why. I mean, a lot of tennis players are looking for excuses why that is. I felt at the time that I should play higher in the lineup, much higher actually. However, my scores or my results, they didn't really support my argument. I felt like I had the personality that I can serve a team much better if I play higher in the lineup than lower in the lineup. And obviously, looking back at it, this is something on one side very selfish to say. I mean, this is something you're like, oh, but are you serious? Like you wanted to play a team sport and then you're not happy. I mean, I was constructive. I wasn't negative towards any of my teammates or my coach. That's absolutely clear. But I didn't feel like I could help the team as much as I could as if I were to play higher. And it didn't help, of course, that our number 1 was one of the best players in the country. And so throughout the season, I ended up playing number 4. I played number 1 doubles, but still something wasn't right for me in the environment. I didn't feel 100% comfortable. Maybe there again, at that age or at that point in my life, I was still a little bit too soft, mentally too soft to fight through this and to face the adversity, something then later on, I think I dealt with quite well. But at the time, I mean, we tried everything, Clara. Like I went to an eye doctor test, I got contact lenses, I changed rackets and so forth. Constantly, I was thinking there's no way I'm playing as bad as I am, theoretically, because it didn't make sense. My game was quite suitable for the hard court. So that was no reason, like what a lot of Europeans face, that they say, well, I really came from the clay courts and I don't like to play on hard court. That was certainly not the case. But so something just wasn't right. And then the coach in Arkansas and the coach in Richmond, they were childhood friends and they talked over the phone. And the coach in Arkansas wanted to build a new team and he was looking for players basically. And my coach at Virginia Commonwealth told the coach at Washoe Baptist that he thinks he has the right guy to start his program. And that's when I decided then to leave. And it also was a financial decision on top because as you're familiar with it on the men's side in college tennis, it's important for coaches sometimes to manage the money that he has available for the team, 4.5 scholarships. So I certainly would have been reduced. My scholarship would have been reduced at Virginia Commonwealth. And in Arkansas, I would have had the same deal or even a better deal that I had at VCU. So the financial aspect also was a factor.
Yeah, that makes sense. How was your relationship with the coach at Virginia Commonwealth? I'm wondering how that shaped your game and thinking.
Believe it or not, it was very good, actually. I'm laughing now because in hindsight, sometimes I wish we would have known the things back then that we know now. No, we got along great. His coaching style was more on the old school, tougher one, like meaning pushing you tremendously in a good way, putting some pressure on you to perform. For him, it was always important that as long as you bring your results, as long as you play well, outside of the tennis court, you can pretty much do whatever you want. So there were a few things that at the time I didn't really agree with. And so I would say, looking at the sport of tennis, we were not 100% on the same line, but I have to give it to him at the time. It was quite immature, but I did learn a lot for him later on. And then my new coach, probably not a surprise then, he had a complete different personality. He was much more in the supporting mode, in focusing on your strengths rather than weaknesses. So it just fit me better. As an example, I had quite a complete game and I probably just had one weakness. So at Virginia Commonwealth, we constantly focused on that weakness to improve it. Whereas in Arkansas, my coach told me, listen, your serve is big, your forehand is big, your volley is good. Don't worry about your backhand. You don't need your backhand. It's good enough to stay in the point. So let's just focus on your strength. And I think this is why tennis is such a fascinating sport, because you can become successful with so many different ways of coaching and playing. It just seemed that this part, to focus on my strength, fit me better than trying to improve my weaknesses.
My next snippet is with my former colleague and one of the best racquetball players in the world, Mitch Williams. Mitch and I share a similar journey in telecom. We both started at Ericsson on the same team at the same time. What I love about this snippet is that our support systems don't always need to be large. I love how Mitch trusted his wife and the wisdom and perspective she shared. How she helped him see that overtraining is not helping him achieve great success, and being more strategic in how much volume you put in and when you want to peak in your career is perhaps more important. In navigating the International Racquetball Tour, Mitch was number 6 in the world in racquetball, and you can find him in episode 7 of my podcast.
Hit on the training thing for a little bit. I'm kind of lucky. Jessie's a really good athlete. She played junior racquetball and swam and played track and soccer. She's very athletic and was a better junior racquetball player than I was. And she goes, you're playing too much. You every day are grinding and your body's not healthy and you're not mentally focused. You need to peel it back. And I was like, So she was helpful to sit down and we talked about it. We whiteboarded on pen and paper of here's where we need to focus. And I built the between bricks of that. But a lot of that was driven by her and what she learned in her journey through racquetball is like you can only peak but so many times a year. You need to be focused on when you want to peak and how you're going to peak and train to do it. I guess it hits home more when your significant other says, hey, dumbass, you're overdoing it, right? So that's in a nutshell what happened. That really is what springboarded. And the unfortunate thing at that is I only really got about 12 to 14 good months of playing like that before I got hurt. And those were the best 12 to 14 months of my career ever.
And last but not least, here's a snippet of my conversation with Jesse Burdick. Jesse Burdick needs no introduction in the sport of powerlifting. Some of his records are: he squatted 909 pounds, benched press 601 pounds, and deadlifted 820 pounds in competition, and holds an elite status in 5 consecutive weight classes, a feat accomplished by very few lifters. He is now an owner and a head coach at PowerWatt, and I feel privileged I was able to observe him and the training that he did with his team when I started my CrossFit journey back at CrossFit CSA. What I love about this snippet is that sometimes we need to observe the reality and assess whether the people we are surrounded by are the people we want to continue to associate ourselves with. Jesse loved baseball, and he got a realization that it is time to quit and transition into something new that he can put his time, energy, and effort into.
That's always a tough transition for anyone and everyone to make, no matter when it happens. And for me, I was able to play for a long time, and it kind of all hit me when I was playing for a team here in San Francisco, and the team ended up folding, and the coach and the manager of the team were like, hey, most of the guys are going to play on this team until we figure out what's going on for next season. And I was like, okay. It wasn't great baseball, but it was something, and it kept me involved and kept my toes in the water. And I showed up to the field, and I usually would show up 4 to 5 hours early. Get in there, you put your stuff away in the locker room, you do all this stuff, you get yourself ready, maybe you get a treatment done, you go out, you take some BP, and then you come back in, you get stretched out, you watch some video, whatever it is that you do, then you go over your pregame stuff, and then you get dressed, and then you get ready to go. And by the time that the game actually started, I'd just basically sit in my car and read because no one else was around. People are getting there 5 minutes before the game started, even 5 minutes late, dressing on their way from their car to the field. And I was just like, all right, this isn't what the level that I want to be playing baseball at anymore. And I had to just be okay with letting it go, because I could have played rec league. And the final game that I had, I pitched 5 innings, and I'm not a pitcher, and I hit 2 home runs left-handed, and I don't hit left-handed. So the level of baseball was very, very low, and I could have been the king of that rec league if I wanted to, but that didn't really matter to me. What I wanted to do was what I had been doing for a very long time, and that wasn't there anymore for me. So when I decided to hang up my spike, I was like, I got to find a way to keep myself busy, and I always keep myself competitive in something. And I would always be up late watching ESPN. And if anyone can remember, again, maybe I'm dating myself, but World's Strongest Man was always the after 10 o'clock on ESPN thing, because that's all that they had, because they didn't have necessarily a ton of other filler. So I watched a lot of World's Strongest Man, and I thought like, hey man, that would be kind of cool. And I reached out to my college strength and conditioning coach, who just so happened to be, very lucky for me, a top 10 powerlifter in the world, the number 1 308 squatter, all-time world record holder. His name was Paul Childress. And he was able to help guide me in the sport and set me up with a gym, set me up with people, and help guide me through things. So I kind of knew that it would be cool to be strong or stronger. I didn't know exactly what that would mean. And I kind of tripped and fell into powerlifting, and, really fell in love with it, just doing the reading, and more fell in love with the community aspect of things, because that's what kind of I really missed the most about baseball. I didn't have that locker room. I didn't have that group of guys anymore. And what I had in the gym was a group of guys and girls who were working hard, who were grinding, and kind of showed me how I could do somewhat of a normal life and still have something to work hard at and something to compete at. So that's kind of how I landed in the powerlifting.
So I hope you enjoyed this episode and that it made you think about your support system, who are the people you have in your circles, and perhaps how are they inspiring you towards your growth and achieving goals that you set for yourself. Is there someone that you may need to add, or is there someone you perhaps may need to remove in order to achieve your potential? Or maybe you need to create a change altogether and find something new you're passionate, curious, and interested in exploring next. Lastly, I apologize for launching this episode a little bit late than my regular schedule. I have a full-time job, sometimes more than that, and I have been going through some personal changes that I'm not ready to announce just yet, but that has been taken quite a bit of my time, so I hope to be back on schedule next Tuesday. And as always, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I want to ask you to please do 2 things that would help me greatly. 1, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcasting platform that you use to listen to this episode. 2, please share this podcast with a friend who you believe might enjoy it as well. It is a great way to remind someone you care about them by sharing a conversation they might be interested in.